My name is Kevin Rosenquist. I am with a background check company called PDA Investigations. We specialize in employment screening and tenant screening. Shout out to Greg, Gordon, Rob, and Maddie for helping me with this thing. That was a bit of a to-do, but we got it going. So it's kind of a dense, confusing topic, background checks. Some of you know that, some of you have talked to. So I kind of thought I'd do like an FAQ, just to kind of talk about what I'm asked the most and how I answer it, and maybe that'll kind of help get you guys started on something like this. Is it really necessary to screen potential employees and tenants? Yes. That's it. The question is. I didn't nail it in that much. Yes, because screening can help ensure the safety of employees and customers. You want to have a safe workplace for your employees. You want to keep your customers safe. A great example, my brother owns a moving company in Los Angeles. He does background checks through us, and not only does he feel better about the employees he's hiring, but he can actually put on his website and kind of use it as a selling point to say, you know, we screen all our employees that are going to come in to your home with where your family is and help move your stuff. So it's important to keep everybody safe. You can weed out potential problem employees. For example, you know, criminal history can weed out people who may have had convictions for stealing in the past. If you're in retail or something like that and you have access to cash, you probably don't want your employees to have a history of theft. Last week I used an example of motor vehicle records. I had a company that was hiring a delivery driver, and one of the guys that I screened for them had 2 DUIs and a reckless driving. Obviously you don't want that, and that is another thing that screening can help with. And on the tenant side, credit history, eviction history. You want to know that your potential tenants will pay their bills, and that they're not in crippling financial debt with 4 credit cards that they're not paying. You don't want to bring that guy into your building. So that's another thing that will help. It'll help you get a read on someone's character. Employment verifications can help make sure someone's not lying. You might have someone who says they were at a place for 3 years. We call that employer to verify it, and it turns out that they've been there for 3 months. So then you can, you know, talk to that person, find out what the deal is. Was there a mistake, or were they just flat out lying to you? Which obviously you don't want that. And all of this stuff helps to lead to a better workforce. You know, a more reliable workforce, better people, better morale, happier employees is going to lead to a better business. What is the cost? Typically, about $30 per applicant is kind of an average. It really depends on what you want to do. If you start to go upwards of doing employment verifications and education verifications, say someone has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and a few different employers, obviously that's going to increase the cost. Drug testing can also kind of bring up the cost a little bit, or actually sometimes a lot bit, depending on what you're checking for. But it also just, you know, depends on what you want. We can customize it to anything that people need. Speaking of drug testing, can an employer legally reject an applicant for testing positive on a drug test? Absolutely. Drug testing is more and more common. Again, that kind of goes along with the safer work environment. You know, if you want to make sure someone isn't have a history or on hard drugs, or even in some cases, you know, people don't want their employees to be smoking marijuana. You know. But bro, weed is legal in Colorado. Now you got a narc. I like that guy. Sorry, Bob Barley. It's actually in Colorado still, you are not allowed, or you can as an employer deny someone employment for that. And that came from Coates versus Dish Network. That's something that was decided very recently. Brandon Coates, fired by Dish Network for testing positive for marijuana despite having a medical marijuana card. He filed a wrongful termination suit. Trial court voted in favor of Dish. Court of Appeals upheld it, and the Colorado Supreme Court affirmed it by a unanimous vote. So, this is what the defense claimed. Unlawful termination because the law states employees cannot be fired for engaging in any lawful activity off the premises of the employer during non-working hours. However, labor law is a federal law. Marijuana is federally illegal still. So the court said, sorry, but you're using a law that is federal, and under federal law, marijuana is still illegal. Therefore, the Dish Network has the right to terminate you based on that. Now, you got to have policies in place, right? You can't just be like, you know, all of a sudden just fire someone for testing positive for marijuana. They have, you know, they have a policy that if you test positive, you're fired. It doesn't really matter, you know, what state you're in, if it's Colorado, Washington, or whatever. So, regardless of how you feel about legalization, it's you know, still federally illegal. Now, that's probably going to change over time. I mean, we can kind of all sense that it's sort of going into more of a legalization route, so that'll change. We stay up on those laws because they change a lot. So, can't I just do one of those instant online criminal searches for $9.95? You can do anything you want. Don't do that. So this is a disclaimer that's on one of those websites. You may not use our services or the information it provides to make decisions about consumer credit, employment, insurance, tenant screening, or any other purpose that would require FCRA compliance. That is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Instant Checkmate does not provide consumer reports and is not a consumer reporting agency. So basically what they're telling you is that you don't want to use, they're saying you can't use it for that, you can use it for the guy you meet on the casual encounter section of Craigslist. You can go on there and it'll help you, might help you weed out some criminal stuff, but you don't want to use that for anything real. And the reason is, they can be often incomplete. A lot of times they'll tell you, an instant online check might say that someone had something on their record, but it doesn't tell you the disposition of the ruling. So you could make a hiring decision based on information that is completely incomplete. You don't know, maybe it was thrown out of court, maybe it was taken down to a lesser charge, something like that. They're often inaccurate. They search databases that are updated incredibly infrequently. Sometimes it can take years before they get everything updated on these databases. So there could be something that, if a state law says you can only report stuff from 7 years back, it might have stuff that's 9, 10 years back, and if you make a decision on that, it can increase your risk of lawsuits. And nobody wants that, obviously. And if this happens multiple times and all of a sudden you're involved in a class action lawsuit, then it gets even worse. And you don't want that, and we don't want that either, so we want to try to help you to make sure that you're not going to do that. Remember that disclaimer. They're not stupid. They want to make sure that you don't use their stuff for anything wrong. So use that site, like I said, for the creepy Craigslist dude. Do not use it for your hiring decisions. Can I request credit reports as part of the background check? Yes, and also no. Credit reports must be relevant to your position. For example, Steve or maybe Jim. You might be hiring someone who has access to sensitive financial data, social security numbers, things like that. Maybe you don't want your potential employee to have that crippling debt we talked about earlier, or maybe they might be more prone to something like identity theft or something like that. Whereas let's say Paul's hiring someone to help him paint. Probably not relevant to a position like that, so you probably need to avoid credit reports unless you definitely need them. Dude, this stuff is confusing. I agree, even though that's not a question. We want to be your advocate. What I'm here for is to ensure that you understand what this whole process is about. The onboarding procedure. There's a lot of paperwork involved in this. I know a lot of you guys are in businesses with a lot of paperwork. There's a lot involved in it. I can help. I know this stuff. I have advanced certification in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. They even gave me a diploma to tell me that I did that. And we know this stuff. It's our job. I'm not passionate about background checks. It might be kind of weird if I was, but I'm very passionate about helping people. I enjoy it. One of the best parts of my day is when a confused potential client or a concerned client comes to me and I'm able to kind of talk them through it and make them realize it's not that bad as long as you have somebody working for you to help you out. We're all about compliance. Again, with that Fair Credit Reporting Act stuff, we know compliance. And customer service. There's a lot of companies out there with puzzlingly bad customer service. I'm looking at you, Comcast, and I don't understand it. I don't understand why people do that. We don't believe in that. We believe in the best customer service we can possibly give and treating our clients as a priority. That's awesome, thanks. Can you show the picture of the funny stoner again? You bet. Cracks me up. That's it. Any questions? Go ahead.
I heard something on the radio about some law changing about where they can't run a background check or something until you're given one interview or something.
There's a lot of state laws that go on top of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and basically what they're trying to do is to not have you run a background check on someone and not even give them a chance to come in first, right? So what they're saying is there are some states that say you actually have to make a conditional offer before you do a background check, which a lot of times can be better too because it saves you money, right? If you whittle it down to 1 or 2 employees and you do background checks on them, then you don't have to do it on 5. But there are some states that say you can't do it before you've brought them in for an interview. And everybody kind of, as part of the whole criminal justice reform thing that Obama's kind of leading and a lot of people are talking about. And it's good. It's basically it's to help the recidivism rate in prisons. So people come out of prison and they can't get a job because no one will give them an interview as soon as they find out that they have a criminal record. Whereas maybe there's some explanation from that. I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, blah, 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 something like that. So there are things changing with that. Yeah.
I have another.
Sure.
Will the background check, if someone's committed a crime in another state, that all shows up? Or?
Depends on the search you do. A lot of times what we do is we search the county criminal history. So we'll look at a address history on somebody, and if they lived in Chicago and they moved out here in May, like I did, and you do a criminal check on them in Cook County. I do not have a criminal record, incidentally, but if somebody did, it would show up, yeah. It would show up. But you have to check those counties. You can do a national database search. It's not quite as detailed, but you can do a national database search that'll pull that as well. Did you have a question, Jim?
In terms of being a landlord, what advice, recommendations do you have to us there in terms of what's legal, background screening, and so forth?
Well, if you get that authorization form from them, you're pretty much set for whatever what you want to do. I actually just had this conversation with Steve yesterday. You know, I think obviously credit history is pretty big for a landlord, making sure that people pay their bills. You know, some people want to look at criminal history or sex offender registry searches, especially for people that have big buildings, you know, that have maybe a 100-unit apartment complex, because you know you don't want to bring someone dangerous into the building. So those things tends to be the biggest thing that we see in tenant screening is credit. Eviction history is another thing. The only downside about eviction history is that you actually have to, your landlord has to report it. So if I was evicted, but my landlord never reported it, I'm not going to show up in an eviction history. So they're not 100% accurate, but if it was reported, you'll pop up there. Right?
Can you verify the residence history?
You can do an address history, yes.
Okay. Yeah. And one more question.
Sure.
I've read, these are all anecdotal things, but I've read in Colorado that there are frequent cases of identity confusion. So somebody gets arrested for a moving violation, doesn't show up in court, and their name is Derek Malmgren. But it's not that Derek Malmgren. You know, how do you make those distinctions?
You mean, are you saying that they have the same name?
The same name.
The same name?
Adam Smith or
yeah.
Joe Wilson.
As far as the criminal searches, you know, we search by what we call identifiers. You can have full name, middle name will help, date of birth, that kind of stuff. We investigate a lot of times. We have a John Smith come through. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of John Smiths out there, and a lot of them committed crimes. Trust me, I've been down that road before. But they, but I mean, you have to do some digging. You know, that's kind of what our job is. We're investigators, and we have to do digging. So
if somebody says, well, you know, that wasn't me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You're saying so it gets attached to them,
Right.
Accidentally. Oh, well, that they would have to take up with the county courthouse and say, well, you got the wrong guy. And usually that stuff kind of tends to work itself out as long as people are aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have you ever run into a situation where somebody's actually using a background check to their advantage in hiring individuals? There's the work opportunity tax credit for employers that hire recently released felons.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty substantial tax credit.
Yeah, no, it
Have you
is.
ever run into that before?
I've never run into anybody who says, run a background check because I need to find me a criminal. I do know that's a very good point. I mean, that is something that they're trying to reduce that recidivism rate, trying to get people, I mean, I forget what the percentage is, but it's ridiculous of how many people end up back in jail when they come out of jail. It's crazy. So, and the main reason is because they come out, they can't find a job, they need money, and so they're like, well, I can sling drugs on the corner. I mean, I know I can do that. So they go back to that, or they do whatever. So that kind of plays into that, saying like, okay, if you're willing to give these people a chance, we'll give you huge tax credits. And again, that's part of the criminal justice reform. And I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing to try to reduce that for sure. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for